Okay, so here we are. It's the last weekend in October 2024, and we're going to check out the new tunnel today here at the Salt Lake City International Airport. I've just exited from the TSA screening area, made a right turn just like I always do, and of course Shake Shack and Panda Express on the left, and the Delta Sky Club is over here. And we're going straight ahead toward the big windows. Looks like they still have the balloons up from the celebration. And the signage says B-Gates. Now, when this airport opened in September of 2020, so that's a little over 4 years ago, they didn't have this tunnel complete.
So I'm interrupting the walk real quick because I'd like to give you a little bit of information as to why it was that the tunnel wasn't built when the airport first opened 4 years ago. So I found this image on the Salt Lake City Airport website, and it's really interesting because you can see both iterations of the airport overlaid upon each other. Now, in the photo, we see the old layout of the airport and then the diagram laid on top of it. So the old airport had 5 different concourses. These are labeled A through E. Now, Concourse A was the very oldest of all of them, dating all the way back to the late 1950s or early 1960s, and it's where all of the airlines besides Delta and Southwest had their gates. So American was over here, Frontier, JetBlue, airlines like that had the gates that were over here in Concourse A. Very short, because again, it was quite old. Now, the next is Concourse B, and you notice there's a bend in it. And where the bend is, that's where Concourse B first ended when it was built. And then it was later extended in the 1980s. And so, I should have mentioned, United had gates over here in Concourse B in the first part of the bend, and then everything out at the end of the bend, that was all Southwest. And then moving to the next 2 concourses, these also were built in the 1980s. And these were all gates for Delta. So Delta had every single gate here in Concourse C and in Concourse D. And then Concourse E was where the commuter jets went. So the SkyWest flights that, were Delta code shares, they had here. Now, this picture actually was taken after a little bit of destruction had happened because Concourse E originally was a Y shape, and we can see only half of that Y. So they had already destroyed the other half of that Y by the time this picture was taken. So that was the airport before they decided to build the new one. And then when they decided to build the new one, essentially they needed to put it in the same place as the old one. And obviously they couldn't just close down the old one. So what they decided to do was to do it in phases. And so the original plan was that the South Concourse would open everything on the left half that you see there. So the right half, the part that has conflicts with the original terminal, would have to be built later. But they would build the South Concourse that stretches out to the left there, or the west, first. They were also able to build part of the North Concourse. So, as I say, the original plan was to open that southern part of the South Concourse, and then they would be able to tear out more of the Delta gates, and then they would work their way through and expand the other concourses, and then tear out the gates. And the interesting thing is, as a part of this plan, before the pandemic hit, they actually had renamed Concourse A and Concourse B to be Concourse F and Concourse G, because the new concourses were going to get the names A and B. So since they didn't want to have any conflict there, they needed to rename those others. Anyway, the pandemic hit in 2020, and airfare or air travel dropped off drastically, and so they decided that they could speed up the process and not have to stretch out the staging as long. Now, that turned out to be a little bit of a short-sighted decision, because we all know that air travel rebounded really quickly in 2021, but they had already made that decision and they had already torn down the other concourses at that point. So about a month after that original section of the South Concourse opened, they were ready to open that original section of the North Concourse. And the plan all along had been to have a tunnel that went directly from the terminal out to the North Concourse, represented here by the blue line that you see on the screen. But you can see that Terminal D was in the way. So they couldn't construct that terminal until they were able to get rid of Terminal D. So what they decided to do was to use a utility corridor that they had constructed further out that didn't conflict with any of the original terminals. And so for the last 4 years, this one represented in red is the one that we've been using. But now the one in blue is finally ready.
Now at this point, this is where you used to have to make the left turn and walk halfway down the corridor there, or the concourse I should say, to find the utility tunnel. And since this airport opened in September of 2020, over 4 years ago, this was the way that you went to get to the B gate. So it was quite a hike. Off to this way, this section opened later, after the original section of the airport did. I think it was like 2 years later. But it's taken much longer for them to get this new concourse opened, or this new tunnel opened. But as of this week, they've completed the new section. So now we can just go straight ahead. And let's just see how much shorter this walk is. Here we are, headed out to the B gates. Wow, this is pretty spectacular. Love the lighting. So this same texture that they have back in the main concourse to give the mountains and valley feel. And the roof treatment here, the ceiling treatment. I like this too. But as far as the distance between the two concourses, still should be the same.
So while I'm down here in the tunnel, let's stop for just a minute to take a look at this diagram and analyze the difference in the walk to get to your gate. Now the new tunnel is exactly the same length as the old tunnel was, which is 1,200 feet. Or about 350 meters. This means that if you're in one of the low-numbered B gates, say B1 or B2, which are represented by letter D on the map, or really for any gate that is west of the old tunnel, the walk distance is exactly the same. It's just a matter of which tunnel you're going to use. However, if you are east of the old tunnel, somewhere in between the two tunnels, or even when they build out the new phases somewhere east of the new tunnel, the walk is definitely going to be shorter. In my case, I was going to gate B20, which is just about where you see letter C on the map. And you can see that the new walk is substantially shorter. And in fact, the airport has calculated that distance, and they've determined that it's about 1,800 feet shorter, or almost 550 meters. And also, the walking time itself is much quicker, dropping from almost 15 minutes down to only 7 minutes to get out there. And I can concur that it did take me only 7 or 8 minutes to get from the TSA out to this point. And one of the interesting aspects of the new tunnel is that they play music to try to match the ambience of the blue lighting as you go through the tunnel. And there's different music in different sections. I heard some jazz music and I heard some oldies and pop music. And one of the things that I really liked was I heard some Pink Floyd as I was going through, as they were playing Shine on You Crazy Diamond in the furthest section out as I went through. Unfortunately, the music means that I couldn't keep the audio as I was walking through there because I would get a copyright strike from YouTube, and I had to do this voiceover instead.
So that glass sculpture on the end is called, I think it's called Northern Light. Definitely brand new. And here's the star of the new work, is this old map that used to be in the old Terminal A. By the way, it's just now still under 8 minutes since I left the security area. So this map was in Terminal A, dates back to the early 1960s.
7 minutes.
So you can see it still shows kind of all these short hop flights, the way you had to do it in the 1960s before everybody traveled in jets to get across the world.
Your attention, please. Will the owner of the black bag left at Starbucks in lobby 1, please report back immediately to claim lost
So they took this thing apart piece by piece. You see the seams, and those seams were in the old map too. But they cut it all apart, and at first they didn't think they were going to be able to save it. In fact, the word was they weren't going to be able to save it. And they actually created a digital copy of it and put that out there in the greeting room. But then after they looked at how they took it apart, they realized they could save it. So they put it back together piece by piece here. Great tribute to the old airport. I'm glad they were able to save it. This is called Northern Light. And then I had my back turned to this as I came up the escalators. But over here this way, they have an Allosaurus, which is Utah's official state fossil. And of course, lots of dinosaur bones have been discovered out in the rural eastern sections of Utah. There's Dinosaur National Monument out there. There's another quarry down southwest of Price that just recently became a national monument. So they were able to bring this Allosaurus, put it on display here. But as I say, you come up the escalators and your back is to it. So either you've got to notice it when you're going down, or when you come up, you just gotta remember to turn around and look at it.
So I hope you've enjoyed this video showing the new tunnel at the Salt Lake City Airport, and I thank you for watching the video. If you could, please take time to like the video, and if you like my channel, please subscribe to it. But for now, this is Postcard Dan saying thank you for watching.